1. Exposed. The judge who tried to block justice fire collision. 2. Corrupt judge's secret scandal uncovered. Face screaming in fear eyes. 3. Inside the shady deal that nearly destroyed justice police car light balance scale. 4. This judge was playing dirty. Here's the truth woman detective bomb. 5. How one judge almost got away with it all exploding head balance scale. A powerful judge was caught in a massive scandal, blocking deportations for violent criminals with no paper trail. Pam Bondi uncovers the shocking truth behind this twisted abuse of power. Was this judge really playing by the rules? Or was he part of a much bigger conspiracy? The investigation reveals hidden corruption, secret communications, and a cover-up that could change everything. Stick around till the end. You won't believe what happens next. Chapter 1. The shocking truth behind the judge's secret power play. Pam Bondi stood at the podium, her gaze steely and unwavering. The air in the room was thick with anticipation. This wasn't just another press conference. This was the beginning of a storm that would shake the very foundations of the justice system. There's a judge in this country who's been playing a dangerous game with the law, and I'm here to expose him. Pam's voice rang out, cutting through the tension. The reporters in the room were on edge, leaning in, cameras clicking, not sure what to expect. But what she dropped next was enough to make anyone's blood run cold. He blocked the deportation of 5 violent criminals. And he did it with no paperwork, no written decision. Just a vague, off-the-cuff comment. That's not how the system works. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The public had trusted this judge. He was considered a model of professionalism, someone who had earned his place through hard work at prestigious schools like Georgetown and Yale. But now his name was being dragged through the mud. And Pam wasn't done yet. This wasn't just one mistake. It wasn't a bad call in a single case. No, this judge has been playing this game for years. And I've got the proof, she continued, eyes narrowing as she looked directly at the cameras. The reporters shifted in their seats, hungry for more. Pam could see the disbelief in their faces. They were still trying to process what she had just revealed. So she dropped another bombshell. He made influential rulings for years, and now it's time to question the integrity of every single one of them. Was he manipulating the law to protect the powerful? To serve his own agenda? The room went silent. It was a bold accusation, one that would send shockwaves through the entire legal system. But Pam wasn't scared. She had done her homework. She knew what she was dealing with. A few days earlier, Pam had received a tip that something wasn't right. A vague ruling made without formal documentation had caught her attention. It wasn't just a mistake. It was too deliberate, too coordinated. Pam leaned forward, letting the weight of her words sink in. This judge didn't just make a bad call. He actively blocked justice. And I'm going to prove it. The reporters went wild, firing off questions, but Pam was already on to the next point. She knew what they needed to hear to understand the magnitude of what was going on. This judge wasn't some rogue actor. He was part of a system that's been rigging the game for years. He wasn't alone. And I'm going to expose everyone involved. Pam's eyes scanned the room as she dropped one last truth bomb. I've seen the evidence. Emails, encrypted messages, altered court calendars. All of it points back to one man. And it's time he paid for his actions. The reporters were on fire now, their questions coming in a rapid-fire sequence. But Pam didn't flinch. She had already made up her mind. This wasn't just about one judge. It was about a broken system that needed to be fixed no matter what. As she walked away from the podium, the tension in the room was palpable. Everyone knew that this was just the beginning. The questions were piling up, and Pam was ready to answer them all. But as she stepped out of the spotlight, one thing was certain. The fight had just begun. The truth was out there, and Pam was determined to make sure it saw the light of day. The real question now was, who else was hiding behind the scenes? And how far would they go to stop her from exposing them all? Chapter 2. The judge you thought you knew, but you were wrong. Pam Bondi leaned back in her office chair, the weight of the discovery settling heavily on her shoulders. This wasn't just about one shady ruling anymore. The more she dug into the judge's background, the more the pieces didn't fit. What was once a promising career was now looking more like a carefully crafted facade. The judge had been a golden boy, a a product of Georgetown and Yale, a man with a spotless reputation. But something wasn't adding up. Something's off here, Pam muttered to herself, flipping through another stack of documents. The judge had been appointed during the Obama administration, a rising star with connections that ran deep. He had been praised for his professionalism, and many saw him as the future of the judicial system. But the more Pam looked into his rulings, the more she questioned everything. She reached for her phone and called her top investigator, Rob. "We need to dig deeper," she said, her voice steady but firm. "This guy's not just making mistakes. I think he's playing the system, and we need to find out how." Rob's voice crackled through the line. "I've got a few things. You're gonna want to see this. The more I look into his past decisions, the more it looks like he's been covering for someone. Maybe more than one person." Pam's mind raced. "Covering for who?" she asked, already thinking about the bigger implications. If this judge wasn't operating alone, they could be dealing with something much more dangerous, an entire network of corruption. "We're getting there. But I think the judge's rulings weren't just influenced by the law. Someone else had their hand in his decisions," Rob replied. "This is bigger than we thought." Pam's instincts kicked in. This wasn't just a case of one rogue judge gone rogue. There was a pattern here. A hidden hand pulling the strings, guiding him, maybe even using him to manipulate high-profile cases. "I need a full report on his cases, the ones he ruled on during his time on the bench." "Something doesn't sit right with me," Pam ordered, slamming the phone back into its cradle. Every fiber of her being screamed that this wasn't the work of an isolated individual. The pieces were starting to form a much bigger picture, and Pam wasn't about to let this slide. The judge had been influential, no doubt about it. But why was he suddenly making decisions that didn't line up with the law? More importantly, why had his rulings always seemed to benefit the same people? Pam paced the room, her mind racing. What if this judge was never about justice? What if he was part of a bigger plan all along? She asked herself, the realization dawning on her. This wasn't about one bad apple. This was systemic corruption. She reached for the files again, flipping through the rulings that had once seemed so perfect. Now, each one felt like a carefully constructed piece of a much larger puzzle. The more Pam uncovered, the more the judge's career began to look like a carefully orchestrated game. The game wasn't about protecting the innocent. It was about manipulating the law to serve the powerful. Pam clenched her fists, the anger building up. The judge might have thought he could keep this under wraps, but Pam was about to turn his world upside down. She wasn't just going to expose one bad decision. She was going to expose an entire network of lies. "Time to bring this guy down," Pam muttered, determination burning in her eyes. This wasn't just about uncovering a corrupt judge anymore. It was about taking down a whole system that had been rigged for years. As she sat back in her chair, Pam knew one thing for sure. The truth was out there, and she wasn't stopping until everyone saw it. The deeper she dug, the more she was convinced that this judge wasn't alone. If he was covering for someone, the real question was who else was involved? And just how deep did this corruption run? Pam wasn't just going to bring down one judge. She was going to bring down the whole rotten system. But the clock was ticking, and she could feel the pressure mounting. Someone didn't want the truth to come out, and they'd do anything to stop her. Chapter 3. The web of lies. Who's really pulling the strings? Pam Bondi was sitting at her desk, her face illuminated by the cold glow of her computer screen. She'd been working nonstop for hours, piecing together the puzzle that was this judge's career. But as the evidence started to pile up, one thing became clear. There was more to this than she had originally thought. This wasn't just a single corrupt judge. This was a coordinated effort. Someone or something was pulling the strings from the shadows. She scrolled through page after page of case files, her eyes scanning each detail like a hawk. Then something caught her eye. It was a strange pattern, decisions made by the judge that didn't add up. Cases involving the same people, the same companies, all suddenly ruled in their favor. Coincidence? Pam didn't believe in coincidences. "Rob, you need to look at this," Pam said, slamming the phone down on the receiver and dialing his number. A few moments later he picked up. "Yeah, what's up?" Rob's voice sounded tired, but Pam wasn't about to let up. This was too important. "You were right. This isn't just about him. There's someone else behind this, manipulating the judge to make these decisions," she said. feeling a knot of anger tighten in her stomach. We need to find out who. This is bigger than we thought. She clicked open another set of encrypted messages she had managed to track down, and her eyes widened. The judge wasn't just making random decisions. The patterns pointed to one thing. Someone was using him to block certain deportations, protect powerful criminals, and shift the balance of power in their favor. But who? And why? This isn't just about justice, Pam muttered to herself, leaning back in her chair. This is about control. And somebody has been pulling the judge's strings for far too long. Pam wasn't one to back down, but this discovery hit different. If this judge had been manipulated into making these rulings, who else could be involved? How many other cases had been rigged? Was there a whole network of corrupted judges, lawyers, and high-profile figures playing the system for their own gain? Pam's blood was boiling. Whoever was behind this wasn't just playing dirty, they were playing for keeps. She picked up her phone again. Rob, I need you to dig into the judge's network of contacts. The people he's been in touch with, the cases he's been involved in. Find out if there's any link between them and these weird decisions. I'm on it, Rob responded. I've got some leads I'm following up on right now. This is way deeper than I thought. Pam hung up, her mind racing. As the investigation unfolded, it was becoming clearer that the judge wasn't acting alone. There was someone or something bigger at play, and they were using this judge like a pawn in a much larger game. Pam could feel the pressure mounting. The clock was ticking, and the deeper she dug, the more dangerous this situation became. She wasn't just uncovering corruption in one court ruling. No, this was the tip of the iceberg. The truth was out there, and someone was doing everything they could to keep it buried. Whoever's behind this better watch out, Pam muttered under her breath, her fingers tightening around the phone. Because I'm not stopping until I bring this whole thing down. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, one thing was certain. Pam was going to have to go all in if she wanted to expose the people pulling the strings. There was no turning back now. The truth was out there, and she was coming for it no matter what. Chapter 4. The Deep Dive. Uncovering the secrets no one wanted exposed. Pam sat at her desk, the weight of everything piling on her shoulders. It felt like the walls were closing in. The deeper she went, the more twisted this entire case became. What started as a simple investigation into a corrupt judge had morphed into something much darker. She was uncovering secrets, dangerous secrets, about a system that was rotting from the inside out. Rob, I need everything, Pam said, her voice tight with urgency as she stared at her computer screen. I need every email, every phone call, every scrap of info this judge has ever touched. If there's even a chance this thing is bigger than him, I need to know now. You got it, Pam, Rob replied on the other end, his voice strained. But this is way worse than I thought. I've started digging through his communications, and it's not just shady rulings. It's encrypted messages, deleted emails, stuff that's been wiped clean from court records. It's like they knew someone would be looking. Pam clenched her jaw. If there was one thing she hated more than corruption, it was people thinking they could cover their tracks. But she wasn't about to let them get away with it. Not on her watch. She rubbed her temples, trying to think through the mess of information swirling in her head. Who else is involved in this? The judge didn't just block those deportations for fun. He's been working with someone or maybe a group of people. But who? The silence on the other end of the line was enough to confirm her suspicions. Rob was just as stunned by what he was uncovering as she was. I'm sending you a list of names, Pam, Rob said, his voice laced with disbelief. I'm looking into them now, but one of the names is connected to a bunch of high-profile cases. And I've found something that could bring this whole thing down. Pam's heart skipped a beat. This was it. She had a feeling that whatever Rob was about to reveal would change everything. She clicked open the file Rob sent her, scrolling through the names, the dates, the connections. Then it hit her like a ton of bricks. The judge's rulings were tied to more than just random cases. This wasn't about justice, it was about manipulating the law for a small group of people who had power, influence, and a whole lot of money. Pam slammed her fist on the desk. This is what they've been hiding. These aren't isolated decisions. This is a coordinated effort to tilt the scales in favor of the wealthy and connected. Rob's voice crackled through the phone again. Pam, there's more. I found encrypted messages between the judge and a few other lawyers. And the content? It's not just legal talk. It's them planning out rulings before the cases even hit the courtroom. They were running the whole damn thing. Pam felt the adrenaline surge through her veins. So it's a setup. They were manipulating the system to get the results they wanted all along. This judge was just a puppet in their game. Exactly. But it's not just about one judge, Rob added. It's about an entire network of people who've been pulling the strings, using this judge as a pawn to keep things under control. Pam felt a chill run down her spine. The corruption ran deeper than she could have ever imagined, and whoever was behind it wasn't going to go down without a fight. This isn't just some bad apple, Rob, Pam said, her voice low and determined. This is a full-on conspiracy, and I'm going to bring it all to light. I'm not stopping until every last one of them pays for this. She ended the call and leaned back in her chair, letting the weight of it all sink in. The closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous things were becoming. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to just roll over. They had the power to protect themselves, to cover up their tracks, to make this whole thing disappear. But Pam wasn't scared. She was angry. And when Pam Bondi got angry, people usually regretted it. With a determined look on her face, Pam stood up, ready to go after the people who thought they could manipulate the law and get away with it. The real fight was just beginning, and she wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. This judge was only the tip of the iceberg. The real challenge was just around the corner, and Pam was ready to face it head-on. Chapter 5. The threats start rolling in. Is Pam in over her head? Pam Bondi's phone buzzed on her desk, the screen lighting up with a message from Rob. She had barely opened it when another notification flashed. Warning. Do not proceed. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the first time she had received a cryptic warning, but this one felt different. The tone was chilling, almost personal. She stared at the message for a moment before pressing call on Rob's number. When he answered, there was no small talk. His voice was strained, and Pam could tell he was already on edge. Pam, we've got a problem, Rob said, his words sharp and clipped. They know we're onto them. I've been getting threats, and I'm not the only one. Someone's been warning our sources to back off. This thing is bigger than we thought. Pam felt a cold chill rush through her. She knew the stakes were high, but she didn't realize just how deep the danger ran. She had always expected pushback from the powers behind the judge, but now it was clear. They were watching her every move. Who's behind it? Is it the judge or someone else pulling his strings? Pam shot back, her voice hard as steel. I think it's bigger than just the judge, Rob replied, his tone grim. I've found connections to several high-profile political figures, and even some names tied to powerful corporations. This isn't just about one crooked judge. This is about a whole system that's been rigging the game for years. Pam slammed her fist on the desk. I don't care who's involved. I'm not stopping now. They can threaten all they want, but I'm not backing down. Pam, you need to be careful, Rob warned. They've got eyes everywhere. I've got sources telling me they're making moves to shut us down hard. Pam clenched her jaw, her blood boiling. She had been on the front lines of a lot of tough cases, but this felt like the kind of fight that could break her, and she wasn't about to let that happen. Don't worry about me, she snapped. I've been in tighter spots than this. Just get me what I need and we'll take them down one by one. As she hung up the phone, Pam's mind raced. The threats were real, no question. But the deeper they got into this case, the more it seemed like they were hitting a nerve. Someone powerful didn't want the truth to come out. Someone who had enough power to make Pam's life very difficult, if not worse. She knew the risks. They always came with the territory. But this time the danger felt different. It was like a weight pressing down on her chest, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her gut told her that she wasn't just dealing with corrupt officials anymore. There was a network of people who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. Pam took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She wasn't going to let fear control her. Not now. Not ever. Then the phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Rob. It was an unknown number. Pam hesitated for just a second before answering. Ms. Bondi, I wouldn't continue your investigation if I were you, a cold voice said on the other end of the line. We know where you are. We know what you're doing. If you value your career and your safety, you'll walk away. Now. Pam's pulse quickened, but she wasn't about to let this guy intimidate her. She straightened up in her chair, her voice sharp. "Who is this?" she demanded, trying to mask the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "That's not important. What matters is that you stop before it's too late. There are bigger things at play here than you realize. You have no idea what you're up against." The line went dead. Pam slammed the phone down, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't need to be told twice. Whoever was behind this was pulling out all the stops, and they were serious. This wasn't just some political conspiracy. This was a warning shot. But Pam wasn't one to back down. She wasn't in this for easy victories. She was in this to win no matter what it took. "Let them come," Pam muttered to herself as she stood up from her desk. "I'll bring this whole damn house of cards down, and I'm not stopping until every last one of them is exposed." The walls were closing in, but Pam knew one thing for sure. She was playing for keeps. She wasn't going to let anyone intimidate her. The deeper she dug, the more she realized how much was at stake. And she wasn't going to stop until the truth came out, no matter who was trying to silence her. The game had just changed. But Pam was ready for whatever came next. Chapter 6. The press conference that could change everything. Pam Bondi stood in front of the podium, the room packed with reporters, photographers, and a sea of cameras. The air was thick with tension. This was it, the moment she'd been building toward for weeks. Every shred of evidence she had uncovered was about to come to light, and the world would finally know the truth. But the pressure was unbearable. She could feel the weight of everything on her shoulders. This wasn't just about a corrupt judge anymore. This was about a network of powerful people who had been manipulating the system for years. And now she was about to tear the whole thing apart. Pam cleared her throat and stepped up to the microphone, her voice steady but sharp. "Thank you all for being here today. What I'm about to say will change the way you look at our legal system, and how far some people will go to protect their own interests." The room went quiet. Everyone leaned in. They knew this wasn't going to be another routine press conference. This was about to get real. Pam paused for a second, letting the anticipation build before she dropped the bomb. "For months now, I've been investigating a judge who's been systematically blocking deportations of violent criminals and making rulings that defy all logic. But what I've uncovered goes far beyond just one judge. This is a coordinated effort by a network of powerful individuals who've been manipulating the law to serve their own interests." The room erupted into chaos. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing, but Pam didn't flinch. She was ready. She had the evidence, and she was about to drop it all. "This judge," Pam continued, her voice growing stronger, "has been making decisions that benefit only the most powerful, decisions that go against everything the justice system stands for. And the worst part? He's not the only one. This is just the tip of the iceberg." One of the reporters yelled, "What do you mean, the tip of the iceberg? Are you saying there are other judges involved?" Pam didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. I've uncovered emails, encrypted messages, and altered court records. This judge was part of a much bigger operation, and now it's time to bring it all to light. These aren't just mistakes or bad calls. This is a calculated effort to control the system and keep the powerful in power." The room went dead silent. The reporters were still taking it all in. Pam could see the disbelief in their eyes, but she knew this was the moment she'd been waiting for. She had their attention now, and she wasn't going to let go. "Over the course of this investigation, I've seen evidence of systemic corruption that runs deeper than anyone could have imagined," Pam continued. "And it's not just about this one judge. It's about the way our legal system has been manipulated by people who think they're above the law." Pam took a breath, her mind racing. She could feel the tension rising. This was the moment where everything could either fall apart or come together. If she messed this up, all her work could be in vain. "This isn't just about one judge or one case," Pam said, her eyes sweeping across the room, meeting the gazes of the reporters who were hanging on her every word. "This is about a broken system that has allowed corruption to thrive unchecked. And I'm going to do everything in my power to fix it." A reporter stood up, his voice shaking as he asked, "But what happens now? What's next? Will the judge be held accountable?" Pam's gaze hardened. "That's exactly what I'm working on. The judge will face charges for obstruction of justice and abuse of authority. And this is only the beginning. The people behind him will be held accountable too. They thought they could get away with it, but they're wrong." The room erupted again, but this time Pam didn't flinch. She had crossed the point of no return. The gloves were off. "Enough is enough," Pam said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This system needs to change, and it starts today. I won't stop until every last one of these criminals is held accountable. If you think this is the end of the story, think again. This is just the beginning." With that, Pam turned and walked off the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the reporters scrambling behind her, but she knew there was no going back now. The world had heard the truth, and it wasn't going to be easy for those in power to silence her. As she left the press conference, Pam knew the battle was far from over. The real war was just beginning, but for the first time she felt like she was on the right side of history, and she wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Chapter 7. The trial that could expose it all. Pam stood in the courtroom, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The atmosphere was electric, tense with anticipation. This was the moment, the trial that would either bring down the corrupt judge or send a message that the system was still broken beyond repair. The stakes couldn't be higher. The judge, now facing charges of obstruction of justice and abuse of authority, sat at the defendant's table, his once confident demeanor now replaced with visible anxiety. The man who had held so much power and influence was now just another criminal in a courtroom full of eager eyes. But Pam knew that the fight wasn't over yet. The game was just beginning. "You ready for this?" Rob whispered as he stepped up beside her, his voice low. He was wearing a suit, but even he couldn't mask the nervousness in his voice. Pam had seen him face down dangerous criminals, but this felt different. This was personal. The corruption they were fighting against was bigger than any one person. It was a whole system of lies, and they were all about to be exposed. "Ready as I'll ever be," Pam replied, not taking her eyes off the judge. "But this guy, he's got connections. Don't be surprised if they try to pull some strings and shut this down before it goes too far." Rob's face tightened. "I know, but we've got the evidence. They can't run from that." The judge's lawyer, a slick, well-groomed man who had represented powerful figures for years, stood up. He wasn't fazed by the accusations against his client. In fact, he seemed almost smug, as if he already had a plan to get the judge off the hook. He glanced over at Pam with a look that could cut glass. Pam's jaw clenched. "You think they can get away with this?" she muttered under her breath. "Let's see if he can talk his way out of this one," Rob said, nodding toward the defense table. The trial began, and the air in the courtroom grew heavier with each passing minute. The prosecution laid out the evidence with precision, showing how the judge had manipulated the law, used his power to block deportations, and systematically undermine justice. The encrypted messages, the altered records, everything was there for the world to see. And yet, the defense was unfazed, using every trick in the book to try and discredit Pam's findings. But Pam wasn't about to let this guy get away with it. She stepped up to the stand, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're not here today because of one bad decision or a simple mistake. We're here because this man abused the very power that was given to him. He blocked justice, and he did it for his own benefit, and for the benefit of those who wanted to stay in control." She paused, letting her words sink in. The judge's lawyer opened his mouth to speak, but Pam cut him off. "Don't bother trying to deny it. We've got the proof. You can't hide behind your fancy legal tricks this time." The judge shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but he didn't say a word. The whole room could feel the weight of his guilt hanging in the air. Pam turned to the jury. This man didn't just break the law. He broke the trust of the American people. And he did it with the help of others who thought they could get away with it. But we're not going to let them. Not anymore. The room was dead silent. The evidence was clear, the truth undeniable. But Pam knew that there were still powerful people behind the scenes. People who wouldn't let this judge fall without a fight. And she wasn't fooling herself. This trial wasn't going to be the end of it. They were just getting started. As the trial continued, Pam could feel the eyes of the corrupt system on her. But there was no turning back now. She had already come too far. The truth was out, and no matter what happened in that courtroom, she knew one thing for sure. The fight was far from over. The trial was the beginning of something bigger. The people behind the judge would stop at nothing to protect their secrets, but Pam wasn't going to let them win. She had already exposed one corrupt judge. The real question now was how many more were out there, hiding in plain sight, pulling the strings from behind the scenes? As the jury deliberated, Pam stood tall, her mind already racing ahead to the next move. She wasn't finished yet. The real war was just beginning. And this time she was going to make sure it was the criminals who paid for their actions. Not the victims. Not the people who had been kept in the dark for so long. Pam wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Chapter 8. The Aftermath: A System Under Siege. Pam Bondi stood on the courthouse steps, the chaos of the trial behind her. But the real battle was just beginning. The judge had been convicted, and the charges were as severe as they came. Obstruction of justice, abuse of power, manipulation of the law. But as the court doors slammed shut behind her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the tip of the iceberg. The cameras were flashing, reporters yelling questions, but Pam had no time for any of it. She was running on pure adrenaline now. The victory was sweet, no doubt about it, but there was still so much work left to do. She couldn't help but wonder, how many more corrupt figures were out there, hiding behind the mask of power? How many more were manipulating the system for their own gain? Pam, you did it! Rob shouted from behind, catching up to her, breathless. The judge is gone down. This is huge. Pam turned slowly, her face hard, eyes focused. This isn't over yet, Rob. It's just the start. If we stop now, we're letting them win. Rob looked at her, confused. What do you mean? We've exposed the system. The judge is off the bench. What else is there? Pam's jaw tightened. This isn't just about one corrupt judge. We've only peeled back the surface of something much bigger. We've shown what one man did, but what about everyone else involved? The ones pulling the strings from behind the scenes? They're still out there, and I'm not walking away until I know the whole truth. Rob's eyes widened, and Pam could tell that the weight of her words was sinking in. She was right. They'd won a major battle, but the war wasn't over. The system was broken, and they'd only started to expose how deep the corruption went. As they walked toward the car, Pam could feel the pressure mounting. There were powerful people who didn't want any of this to see the light of day. They'd already tried to silence her with threats. If they thought they could stop her, they were dead wrong. Pam wasn't backing down. Have you noticed the strange silence? Rob asked, glancing around nervously. It's like no one's talking about what comes next. It's all just quiet. Pam didn't answer at first. The silence was unsettling, sure, but it made sense. The people who were behind this mess were powerful, and they didn't like having their dirty laundry aired for the public to see. She knew they wouldn't take this lightly. They'd make moves to protect themselves, and Pam was prepared to face whatever came next. What do you think happens now? Rob asked, sensing the weight of Pam's thoughts. Pam stopped walking, her eyes scanning the parking lot. We keep going. We've sparked something, Rob.